Every every week
Every
they
week
must
someone must be
sacrifice.
fed to the CMC machine, you know? So hello and welcome to All Four Quarters, your one-stop shop for news, views and overreactions to all things NFL. This week was a real hodgepodge between people not showing up and games getting real close. So hey, we got Connor here and we got Sean.
Hello.
How are we getting on, Sean? How's all down in Cork?
Yeah, not too bad. I was just up in Athlone for the weekend visiting relatives. My nieces have nicely put all their birthdays quite close together, so you only have to go up once to celebrate them all at the same time. But as I was telling you before the recording went on, my parents built them a kind of a jungle gym type playground thing. So they were running around like mad, just trying to keep track. It's just the thing about kids is if they start to run in different directions, you kind of have to make choices about which one is more likely to do harm to themselves. So there is a lot of on the go decision making to be done when you're dealing with multiple children.
Any of them got the moves? Any of them look like they're going to be, potential flag superstars for Team Ireland or anything?
They have the energy, certainly. I don't know if we have to see if they develop the discipline.
The coordination is maybe not there at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, they're only 7 and 5 and 5 at the moment, so they're
Fair enough.
Plenty of development to be done.
Yeah. Like they don't need to be signing with agents just yet. Then. No, quite.
I'll sign them. I'll take care of their financial interests. Don't you worry.
No, quite enough here on my end. We kind of had D&D on the weekend and a few bits like that, but yeah, mostly just sitting here waiting on. I ordered some new golf clubs, so kind of waiting for them to land and. Yeah, very exciting as you descend into middle ages, and obviously kind of throwing together a crew for the upcoming Dublin game this weekend. So we don't have tickets. We may pick up a few closer to the time. We'll see kind of what price they're going at that stage. There's increasingly more and more of them coming back onto the market at the moment. So we'll see. But if not, we'll find a nice spot in town and have a bit of party. Looks like Dublin should be good crack for it. There's team bars for multiple teams, including the Chiefs, who are making more of a push to get this Ireland game part 2 done. So they are taking over a bar in town, bringing over, I think, Dustin Colquitt and maybe one or two other players and or ex-players, and yeah, it should be a bit of crack. We'll fly into the news. There's not as much this week. We are recording a touch earlier this week on the Monday because of just scheduling. So you will notice that the talk about the Detroit-Baltimore Monday Night Football game might sound a little bit different when we get to it. It's because it'll be recorded after this, and also means if we have any takes on those two teams that are incorrect, we can just blame it on that and not the fact that we're idiots. Controversy corner. Some questions are being raised about this expedited review system that the NFL have brought in this year. So obviously this is the Eye in the Sky in New York, I believe it's based, which is meant to kind of zoom in and be able to like quickly assist referees in rectifying incorrect decisions and so on. There was a little bit of controversy earlier on in the season about this because it only has the ability to pick up flags rather than throw flags, which meant when things were missed and the Eye in the Sky could see it, it wasn't able to throw a flag, which is a slight problem. But broader problems emerged in the week just gone. So this expedited review system has come in and gave directions on 2 games where it was quite clearly incorrect on what it was doing. The one that had a lot of people up in arms was the Terry McLaurin touchdown that was taken off the board. So on the field it was called a touchdown. And then the expedited review system came back and said it wasn't. But then reviewing the video angles that they had, there wasn't. Now, look, it's one of those ones that could be or couldn't be, but there wasn't sufficient video evidence to change the ruling on the field. There was nothing that was clear. So there was quite a lot of anger about that. But then probably even more obviously egregious one is Puka Nacua had a first down catch. The replay assist came in and overturned the completed catch to say that it was an incomplete, and then the Rams challenged this and won so that it stood as a catch, which means if you've got an expedited system to rectify mistakes and then you have to have the coaches go and then recheck them to get them correct, that means it's not doing its job, and that can get incredibly messy. Because you imagine what happens in a scenario like this if a coach doesn't have a challenge flag left and it causes something like this to happen. Like, this is a good idea. It's a good system to have as a support for refs on the field. I do think if you're going to use it, it has to have slightly more comprehensive powers for being able to catch things that are missed as well as just adjusting things that are called incorrectly. But my God, like if you want to do this, you need to get it right.
Well, I mean, the challenge is getting it right, and I think it's a general trend we're seeing in a lot of kind of top level professional sports these days. You think about the VAR system in football or the video ref system in rugby. It's a tricky business when you have essentially a second referee. Like the whole thing about the ref thing, and you think especially about the NFL where there's a very strict hierarchy between the line judges and the head ref and the umpires behind the
Back judge.
behind back judges and stuff, where there has to be a person who makes a final decision to call it. And when you introduce a video system into it, essentially is you're kind of messing with that hierarchy a little bit by putting someone potentially above or not. And it's each sport tries to solve it in a different way. And I think the NFL's issue is they want precision. Their whole thing is that they're narrowing, like you think about what is a catch and the whole business we've had, looking at the issue of what a catch is over the past 10 years and how it's gotten narrower and narrower in terms of its definition and the precision. Essentially, America is a litigious culture, and the precision of the kind of the almost legal level of precision in the decisions is part of what the problem is here. And the thing is, just an awful lot of these things are very close calls, or it's not entirely clear what's happening, or you don't have a perfect angle in every kind of situation. And so there will always be an element of ambiguity in any kind of these kind of situations. And there is also the problem is they've been messing with this video replay thing for a long time. I remember a few years back they tried to bring in the ability to look at pass interference calls and all this kind of stuff, and they found that there was just some things are just too subjective to be done. So I mean, there's just it's an inherent problem with the video system is that you're taking the locus of authority around the ref because they're human and they make mistakes, or there's a finite number of them and there are things they're going to miss, and you're putting that somewhere else. And the problem then becomes trying to manage those two different authority systems against each other, and it's just inevitable. You're going to have mistakes like this, or you're going to have conflicts like this, and it as you said, it's about correct management. There needs to be a very clear, or it needs to be much clearer. It seems a kind of a line, a chain of command, or a line of authority. You intervene in these situations. You have this level of power. This is and I think there's also an information thing. I think there was contradictory information coming out, I believe, in the broadcast about whether or not replay assist was used. And I think there were later reports claiming that some of the refs said that the assist system in the Rams game wasn't used. So there needs to be a communication. I think the clarity will be helped a lot if people are very clear about what is being judged, what can be shown, and how precise some of these calls can be. Because the last thing you want is for the refs on the field to start being undermined, which is kind of what's happening in soccer a little bit, where the refs on the field are getting undermined because their calls keep getting corrected, in inverted commas, by ridiculously pedantic decisions being made with a video.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily want that. So it's about communication. I think it's about clarity of authority. I'm not necessarily against the video system itself. I think it just needs to be very precise parameters around its use and very clear communication about its use and where it stands in the various chains of authority, basically.
Yeah. The other thing that like the Terry McLaurin one in particular was like the video angles that they had were not phenomenal, but obviously there wasn't anything on the video that would show a knee being down or a shin being down to be able to pull back the touchdown. And it does bring back a recurring question, which is the NFL had revenue of over 23 billion last year. All the teams receiving nearly half a billion in profit sharing in national revenue sharing. This is a company that has a huge amount of money. How do we not just have a 4K cam on either pylon in every stadium, and then you can just go, right, here we go, here's a high def picture of did the ball cross the line or not, did the person's leg happen to be down beforehand? Like it's slightly expensive. It's not expensive in the grand scheme of what these guys do. And obviously, look, they produce loads of content out of these things. They want all these for their NFL videos and for the broadcasts and everything. So like, just put them into all the stadiums and make use of them if that's what you're going to do. Stop fecking around and wasting money. On that lovely note, we'll move over to some transactions. There haven't really been much. We're early in the week, so there might be one or two after we record this that I might drop in. But maybe one of these, we mentioned that Koo was kind of replaced last week with Romo. He was officially cut with a big thank you, Koo, for your time here with the Falcons. Maybe they did that too soon, Sean, because his replacement went 0 for 2 this week. Koo may get his job back.
I was really surprised about the initial cut because Koo is okay. He's had a little bit. He's fallen off a cliff a little bit in terms of the kickers, and kicking is a ruthless game. If you can be very easily cut because you're not that expensive, and there's a whole bunch of kickers to replace you. But Koo has always been one of the best kickers in the league, and I really think the Falcons pulled the trigger on getting rid of him way too early, under the assumption, I guess, that this other guy was better, and it's not clear at all that is the case.
He was good last week, but God, he was shocking this week.
I mean, I think it's quite likely that if the Falcons don't come around to picking Coop back up, he will be picked up by some other team in the next 3 or 4 weeks because he's just a really good kicker.
Yeah.
And okay, he's maybe not at its peak anymore, but he's still probably better than a good 50% of the other kickers out there. So yeah. I was very surprised by the initial cut, and this official getting rid of him thing is just it's just the Falcons. They consistently just make terrible decisions for no reason whatsoever.
And it does feel as well that if you were Koo, you probably don't necessarily want to go back to the Falcons now. I think particularly with the confidence that goes into being a kicker in the NFL, kind of to feel that, well, they've already cut you once, they'll cut you again kind of thing. I'd say he might not want to go back there. And like I said, I'd imagine he'll find a home relatively soon. I imagine next week we'll be saying he's on someone's practice squad, and the week after he'll be up kicking for them. There was a bit of a bad week for injuries this week, Sean. I've had some season enders and a couple of other larger ones. So Arizona running back James Conner is out indefinitely with an ankle injury. It looks like it's likely going to be surgery. We haven't had the official line on that, but it is being reported that it's going to be a season ender for him. It didn't look very good at all. He had to be carted off the field. The entirety of the team, including the bench, came out onto the field to kind of cheer him on as he was being removed. And LA Chargers running back as well, Najee Harris, had a injury. It very much on the telecast and on the replays looks like his Achilles snapped, which is very bad. Obviously that would be a season ender, and possibly at his age it might not be something he's going to be coming back from as a running back. So those are two serious injuries to running backs for both those teams.
Yeah, and I mean, varying levels of importance. I mean, I know you're not a huge James Conner fan in general, but he is a very big part.
He is a huge part of that offense.
Cardinals offense. I mean, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons in the last 2 seasons, and he's standing the consistency they need because there's such volatility in their passing game that he offers them the consistency of just getting yards on a weekly basis that they're going to need, and they're really going to suffer not having him. The Najee Harris thing, obviously, his Chargers' career has kind of gotten off to a little bit of a slower start. I mean, he had the eye injury that kind of hampered his ability to slot in, and the rookie Hampton has kind of taken over an awful lot of his snaps. I think he's
only on a 1-year contract anyway, so I think
very few yards in the first 2 games anyway. So, and if this is the end of his season, it's probably the end of his Chargers career. It might be interesting to see. The Chargers might. I mean, obviously they can't pin their entire running game on a rookie, so you might see some veteran get picked up and slotted into the Chargers in that situation. But I don't think the Chargers are going to miss him as much as the Cardinals are going to miss Conner for sure.
No, not at all. And we will be talking about how the Chargers run game looked when we get to the game reviews. Other news in injuries. So Denver linebacker Dre Greenlaw has been put on IR to return in 4-week minimum or max, or at least 4 weeks. He has a quad injury. They seem relatively positive that it'll only be the 4 weeks, maybe 5. Dallas wide receiver CeeDee Lamb left the game early with an ankle injury. There was some shots of it on the sideline, quite swollen up. They taped it, but he wasn't really able to come back in. He says he feels like next week he'll be fine. We're awaiting confirmation on that, but they don't seem overly worried about it. But they have lost their center Cooper Beebe for 6 to 8 weeks to an injury, so that's not great for a team that's already kind of tumbling down everyone's power rankings at this stage. San Francisco get more injuries. Defensive lineman Nick Bosa left the game with a knee injury. They are hoping slash hopeful that it's not an ACL injury, but he's going for further tests, I think, today. So we'll see what comes of that. Chicago defensive back Jalen Johnson is sent to IR with a groin injury. So the IR designations this time of year, they are going to be able to come back. They only have to be gone for 4 weeks minimum. It can continue onwards, but it means that these guys are expected to hopefully come back during the season. And Tennessee defensive lineman Sweat is gone to IR as well, so another 4 week minimum there. So a fair whack of injuries to these teams. San Francisco is just every week there seems to be another. Like I said, CMC is still going strong. So
every every week
every
they
week
must
someone must be
sacrifice.
fed to the CMC machine.
I mean, it is an interesting. You imagine Shanahan having a conversation with the devil and being like trying to figure out who he can sacrifice each week to keep CMC going, and how deep in the season you can actually get away with that and still be competitive. Like it's either that or there's just something really wrong with their training pitches
Yeah.
that is destroying people's ankles and knees and all these kinds of things along. I mean, the other big one that you mentioned, I think, is CD Lamb. I mean, the Cowboy season is kind of they're 0-3 now, I think, and it's kind of descending. Oh, they're 1-2. Sorry, they did actually beat the Giants, even though
Yeah.
they scarcely deserved to. But their season is rapidly disintegrating, and Lamb is one of the few bright sparks that offense has. And if he's out for a while or he's not at 100%, that's going to be a big issue for the Cowboys in trying to remain
Yeah. Well, we saw that in the game this
relevant.
week that like as soon as Lamb wasn't there, they did look a little bit rudderless at times. I think that one is only going to make it into the dump off, but yeah, he's a very important part of that offense, particularly with like all the other bits are all a little bit ramshackle. Like the run game is kind of working even though it shouldn't, and I think some of that is coming from, the attention that the likes of Lamb draws on the field. So that's a worry for them as well. Denver linebacker Greenlaw, he's been playing very well for them, but that defense is doing okay at the moment. So I'm sure as long as he is back in the 4 weeks, they'll be happy enough with that. I suppose things just get worse for Tennessee. Sweat's gone on IR now as well. It's God, that team is just spit tape and dreams. Like it's going nowhere. Well, on that lovely note, we'll go over and have a look at the games from last week. So first up, we have Rams at Philly. This was 26-23. It was a very exciting game. The Rams absolutely dominated the first portion, essentially to 3 quarters of this game. It was 26-7 midway through the third quarter, and it just looked like the Rams were coasting to victory. But the Eagles rallied, blocking 2 field goals en route to doing it. Stafford had an interception on the first drive, and it wasn't looking great. But then they proceeded to score on their next 6 possessions, being able to build up to that substantial lead. He went for 196 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Williams had a good day on the ground, 94 yards on a receiving touchdown as well. Puka went over 100 yards in this game. Everything was kind of going well for the Rams all the way up to that mid-third quarter, and then it all just started to turn a little bit. The Eagles had a really horrible start to this game. So they scored a touchdown on their opening drive, and everything looked fine. And then their next drives went for -5 yards, -8 yards, 3 yards, 1 yard, -1 yard, and 0 yards. So like they were just completely at sea against this LA Rams defense. But then they rallied to put up a touchdown, another touchdown, then they turned the ball over on downs and finally got another touchdown. They kind of perked up as soon as they kind of went to using their pass game again, which is funny because I've said this for the last 2 or 3 weeks that like the Philly team, they haven't really been passing, and it felt like maybe they should be doing that a little bit more because it was a weakness on some of the teams. Like they played the Chiefs last week, and Jalen Hurts I think had 101 yards passing in that game, and I was kind of going like, eh, as weaknesses go on our defense, we have exploitable parts in our secondary. Why are they not just throwing the ball at it? And once they got going, that way it kind of worked for them quite well. There was again, even after the NFL came out and said, well, we're going to make a point of calling false starts on this tush push, and we'll sort it. Like there was 2 blatant false starts on tush pushes that were not called at all. But yeah, look, their special teams were really the story of this one. The Rams were sitting in a position to win. They had driven down. They were about to kick a field goal. They were going to. in fact, they could have put themselves further ahead earlier because they had two field goals blocked in this one by them, and it was incredible play by them. And then to see the big man running down the field, doing the length of it, getting his defensive score, he got up to some speed, didn't he? For a fella that's like 320, 330, he was absolutely rocketing down there. And I'm sure there's a bunch of gamblers out there who are very happy because I imagine that that probably pushed it over the spread or whatever for the game. But yeah, like from the Rams' position, they were there to win it. It was their game, and I'm not 100% sure of what happened. I'm not sure if it was a coaching collapse, taking the eye off the ball, but like, McVay doesn't feel like he was going to slow up on them. So maybe it's just the Eagles kind of woke up a little bit. Like definitely their offense woke up when they started going to the air or whatever, but it does have this weird sense of inevitability that the Eagles are going to just kind of be able to find a way to win a lot of these games. That's 19 wins out of their last 20 games. And particularly coming back from that much of a deficit, a 19-point deficit in the third quarter against a strong team at home. Like that feels like the kind of rallying cry that a team can get behind and can kind of help sustain them. Because like this crowd was mad as hell. This crowd was booing Sirianni in the second quarter. Like the Eagles fans are a fickle bunch, I will say. But yeah, like this kind of comeback win against an opponent who, they met in the playoffs as well, and they nearly beat them in the playoffs. Like it feels like a good springboard and a good kind of mantra for the team to then start to build from even.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a little bit less optimistic about the Eagles having seen this game because I am kind of starting to get 2023 vibes from them where they're winning games but not really doing it in a convincing way, and you're just wondering when the wheels are going to come off. And I think this game is maybe, it shows the two ways their season can go because in that first three quarters or whatever, they were quite poor offensively, and this is not a. I mean, it's a decent Rams offense, defense, and they've done quite well in the first few weeks, but they're not really considered to be a kind of a big name thing, and obviously the Eagles are just uber stacked offensively, and they just couldn't seem to find an awful lot of answers. And then eventually, when they got the momentum behind them, they got the win. And you're right. I mean, that momentum does seem to be a big part of what the Eagles have going for them, and at their best, they do seem unbeatable. And a game like this does kind of lend itself to that narrative of the Eagles are just simply unbeatable, that you can get 19 points ahead of them, but they will just slowly grind you down. And right at the crucial moment when you think you maybe can just sneak out the win with the walk-off field goal, it all falls to bits with the block, and you end up losing by 7 points in a game that you kind of were thoroughly the better side in. So, I mean, the Eagles, I feel like my preseason big upness on them is kind of fading with each time I watch them because it's like this team doesn't quite feel like it's connected in all the ways it should be. Not in the way it was last year when they were really in the groove in their championship, and not in the way in 2022 when they kind of got going. It does feel a little bit more like that 2023 where you're just waiting for the first big loss and then how they react to that. Now, it may never happen. Like the Eagles are so talented that they can just win games like this, and it is quite possible momentum will carry them quite far, but I would be worried about what happens when they kind of run into a defeat on some level. Mm-hmm. For the Rams, I mean, it's a missed opportunity, yes, and they'll be kicking themselves that they couldn't win. But I think what they proved in this game is that they are able to compete at the top end of the NFC. We thought they were maybe a wildcard team, kind of sniffing around maybe a 6 or 7 seed. I think if they play like this all year, they have a good chance of winning their division. They have a good chance of having a good seed and going, relatively deep in the playoffs. I mean, Stafford he's old, Matt Stafford now, but he's still got that. You give him the ball with 2 minutes left and a chance to win, and he's going to find a way to get there. And once he gets in the groove, he's very hard to stop. And obviously with the pieces they have around him on the offense, there's quite an awful lot going on there. So I'm like, it's a frustrating loss, and I know McVay will be kicking himself, and they'll all be cursing it. But I think if you're sensible about this as a Rams fan, you come away and go, we're as good as the Eagles. Like, we should have beaten the Eagles twice now, but certainly in this game, they certainly should have won it. And if you take that mindset forward, I think the Rams could be a very dangerous prospect as the season progresses.
No, I get you. I do worry a little bit though that the Rams, that it's kind of becoming like the Bills Chiefs problem where like they just couldn't get past them in the thing, because like the Rams apparently have it in their preseason magazine that went out with the season tickets, that like they refer to the playoff game as we were 2 plays away from beating the eventual Super Bowl champion. Like it almost has a feel of that, like Colts hanging the AFC finalist banner about it. That like I think they really needed to get over the mirror. But I think, look, you're right, and if they can get themselves into a good spot and can get themselves a decent seed, I think they'll be hungry to try and take them on again in the playoffs, because I think that's where like both these teams are headed that direction, and I think it could make for a very fun game. Next up, Sean, we have Green Bay at Cleveland in what I'd say is probably the upset of the week, 10-13.
Yeah, it was it was a defensive grind, I think, is the only phrase you can use to describe this game. We did talk a little bit last week, and you and specifically went into some detail, Connor, about how this Browns team is on their defense is heavily underrated and statistically is quite good, and we definitely saw that they would not that we the Packers offense, we've been talking them up about the kind of the maturity and the smoothness and how it all seemed to click together. They just could not really get going in this game, and they were only really helped the Packers by the fact that the Browns appeared to have the worst offense I've ever seen in my entire life. And it looked like a game where the Packers were just going to slowly grind themselves to like a 10-0 win, and you know, a horrible game, but you take the W and you go back to Green Bay still unbeaten, and you build forward and be like, oh well, you know, at least we grinded out the win in this one. But they didn't. They just couldn't. The blocked. Firstly, a crucial love interception at a moment when the Packers looked like they were going to close out the game with a big drive, let the Browns back into it, and then a blocked field goal when the Packers looked to be in a position where they were going to put themselves, comfortably ahead to win the game, and then they just allowed the Browns to finally put together enough of a drive to get 55 yards away and kick the field goal. So it's a game where I'm like, yeah, sometimes these happen, and the Browns have a real history of just dragging teams down into the mud with them, and it's like that you don't get into a wrestling match with a pig, because at a certain point you realize the pig likes it, and the pig is good at what it does. It does feel like you don't want to be getting into a defensive grind fest against this Cleveland Browns side, because they're better at it and they enjoy it an awful lot of how they do it. So from the Browns side, defense really good. They look like probably the best iteration of Stefanski defense, and they're generally in this era the Browns have put out a lot of good defenses. This might be the best of them. Offensively, there's really nothing going on though for the Browns, except for maybe Judkins, who had 94 yards and a touchdown. He does look like the one bright spark, but they really are going to be carried by their defense going forward. And I mean, Flacco was okay, but he's old and he's not the guy to lead a team that wants to be competitive. So for the Browns, I don't really know how much you can take away from this win other than we got a really good defense. For the Packers though, this one's got to hurt. I mean, they had people during the week talking about going unbeaten, and they didn't see anybody that was better than them, and to drop it like this, I mean, a really winnable game that they should have been comfortable in, but their offense just couldn't click, and their defense, that as good as it is, let them down at a key moment and couldn't hold out the Browns, prevent them from getting into field goal range. So for the Packers, it's like a step back in that narrative of, championship contenders or whatever. I mean, you got to be able to grind out these kind of games. I mean, this is a game that the Eagles would win, right? Because they just know how to find a way to win stupid games, where I don't feel this Packers is quite there yet. So they come away with, they just must feel sick about themselves about the one that got away. But don't sleep on this Cleveland defense, because they are going to be a force for any team they come up to. The Browns' challenge is just putting enough points on the board to actually win the damn game at the end.
Yeah, like I think I mentioned this previously, because it's a bit of a question of how long do you have Joe Flacco leading this team, in that, like, if you've got a defense that can hold down opposition the way that these guys are, like, surely you have to at some point just be like, well, we should see if we can get a little bit more out of the offense by going to one of the young kids, like, because there are winnable games on this schedule, particularly if this defense is playing to that level. Look, the Lions next week, we'll see. Like, the Lions are a very good team, but, like, the Packers were thought by many to be the top offense and our top team really in the league, and, like, they held them to 10, but, like, they've got and you're not going to like some of this, Sean, but like they've got the Patriots, they've got the Dolphins, they've got the Jets, they've got the Raiders, they've got the Titans, they've got
Yeah, those are
the
all winnable games,
Bears,
definitely.
like even things like the Steelers, because we've seen
Mm.
up and down from them. They've got them twice. They're in London against the Vikings, who will be on a backup quarterback, but also have an incredibly good defense. Like there there are ways that this season could actually go quite well for Cleveland if they could just get a little bit more out of the offense. And as you mentioned, the rookie Judkins looks good. They've got a good backup in Samson because he was doing well before Judkins got signed. Um, so like there's reasons for optimism if Cleveland can sort out the offense a little bit. For the Green Bay side, this is a bit worrying. I think if you're just kind of considering what it kind of means, like they looked imperious for the first 2 weeks, but now we kind of look at it and we go, well, the Lions team were really not firing in week one because they've looked very different afterwards. The Commanders, like, they got an injury and stuff, but they were miles ahead of the Commanders. But maybe the Commanders aren't actually all that good. Like the Browns are the first defense to punch them in the face, and they didn't really respond all that well to it. I've always had a thing in my head of Green Bay seeming very talented, but more of a finesse team than a hard nosed team, and that's always concerned me about them in the playoffs. And maybe that's where the narrative in my head comes from, that like they tend to do really well during the season, get to the playoffs, and then get the shit kicked out of them by a team that has bruising running backs and whatnot. And I just like to see them go toe to toe with someone who's going to punch them and them punch back real hard. The defense looked good in this one, and Micah Parsons is fitting in nicely and all that. We'll have a fun one against Dallas this week, but yeah, Green Bay, like hopefully it's just a bump in the road. They were looking past this Cleveland game. But we'll see. We'll see. Next week will tell us a bit more. Next up, Denver at the Chargers, 20-23. This was a super duper defensive game. Denver's defense looking a lot more like what we were expecting it to look like coming into the season. Denver were leading till there was 2 minutes left in the game. Then it was tied up, and then they just kind of made a bit of a hames to their last drive. They kind of went 4 and out or 3 and out on that one, and it was a sack, a completed pass for no game, and an incompletion. Then their defense had to come out and do its job and just stop the guys from being able to drive down into field goal range, and then a bad penalty helped the Chargers get into field goal range. Now Herbert came on a lot in the second half of this game, looked a little bit stronger. He went 28-47, which is telling about how good this defense was playing against him for a touchdown and interception. They sacked him 5 times in this game, and like Herbert he's a relatively mobile guy in the pocket. Like he's not easy to grab, and he's a big dude, so he's hard to take down. Hampton took over the backfield after that gruesome looking injury to Harris, and he did very well, 70 yards and a touchdown on the ground and 6 receptions for 59 yards through the air. So he looks good, and I don't have any real concerns about the Chargers' run game after that. And their defense warmed up later into the game. To be honest, Denver kind of had it easy in the first half off them, but then they tightened up in the second half. Denver probably should have won this game, Sean. If I'm very honest, they were just sloppy in it. They had committed 10 penalties for 90 yards, which is just atrocious. You can't be doing that. Sean Payton is always someone who preaches this kind of intense game awareness. Don't be making mistakes. Let the enemy make mistakes stuff. And like you can't be having 90 yards worth of penalties and that. Bo Nix was a bit pedestrian, 14-25 for 153 yards and a touchdown. But it was interesting to see him go back to what kind of helped him out a bit last year, mid-season form, where he went on scrambles a little bit more and one or two designed runs. So he rushed 8 times for 33 yards, and that kind of kept him alive. Sutton was their best receiver, 118 yards and a touchdown, and Nick Benito on the defensive side earning that big fat paycheck. He got 2 sacks and 5 QB hits in this one. There was a strong rally from the Chargers, but really overall not a very comprehensive performance. Like if we wanted to come out of this going, man, yeah, the Chargers, they're 3-0, they look great, they're really challenging for the top. It's strong. They've got 3 division wins now. They're 3-0, head and shoulders at the top of the AFC West. But I'll be honest, watching this game, I didn't see a team that was terrifying or would strike fear into the hearts of anyone. They looked good for about a quarter of this game, and the rest of it looked like they were kind of threading water. So they'll be happy to get the win, but I'm not sure they're going to be overly happy about the way in which they got there.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing I think we got to remember about the Chargers is winning. Winning is a good thing. You know, the Chargers are getting into a winning mentality, and I know Jim Harbaugh doesn't particularly care if they're winning flashy or winning not flashy. I mean, 3-0, and you've beaten all of your divisional rivals, and you've kind of got that's. I think it's the first time in 20 odd years they've managed to start their
Yeah.
AFC West slate with 3 wins. So they're in a very good position to win this division now. I think the offense is still finding itself a little bit. They maybe still don't quite know how Herbert is going to slot into this, and it's going to be interesting how they move forward. If Harris reduces, I mean, they lose a lot of depth at running back if they don't replace Najee Harris, and I don't think you can build an entire running game around Hampton. So I wonder if they will start to pivot a little bit more and lean on Herbert's passing flashiness in future weeks in order to build upon that and kind of go away from the principles that they've been trying to establish. So that'll be interesting to see how the Chargers go forward. But I mean, they got it done. Key third down conversions when they needed to. Their defense stepped up and clamped down on Bo Nix and the rest of that offense when they at the crucial moments. It kind of feels like it's a confidence builder, right? They were able to win a game against a team that's basically sort of at their level or close to it. They were able to get the win, necessary. That kind of builds their confidence going forward, and it's just going to be interesting to see how the offense now evolves in the coming weeks. So I'm still on the Chargers train. I think 3 wins, it's nothing to sniff at. To go back to back in terms of beating all of your divisional rivals puts them in a very strong position to win this division. Now, in terms of the Broncos, it kind of feels like it's much of the same. We know their defense is quite good. And the 5 sacks and the forcing Herbert's first turnover of the year, and they're very, very strong in the pass rush. I mean, I think we know that about the Broncos. The key thing is just how good their offense is in comparison, and it kind of felt like as the game went on, they got figured out a little bit. Like that, a lot of their big plays were quite early in the game, and where Bo Nix was looking at his best was in the kind of opening few quarters. But as the game progressed, it kind of felt like the Chargers defense was beginning to figure out how to limit them, and then they just shut them down. Right at the end of the game, forcing them to give up field position and all that kind of stuff. So I feel that this kind of tells us that the Chargers are a team that have a chance at a top 4 seed. And I feel like it tells us the Broncos are probably a 6 or 7 seed wildcard team. So I think I come away with this game with my perceptions reinforced rather than doubted in any big way. I think I feel I have a decent sense of where these teams are and how their season's going to pan out if they continue on this trajectory.
Yeah. Next up, we have the Jets taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 27-29, a nail biter at the end, Sean, but the Jets choked it.
I mean, why is this game not in the dump-off? Were the Bucks not up by 3 touchdowns and cruising so much that Red Zone stopped showing the game? And how could they possibly turn around and show that suddenly the Jets were 1 point ahead under miraculous circumstances, requiring the Bucks to actually win this game twice? I mean, I really don't know how either of these fan bases come away from this game, because the Bucks were cruising. They were 19 points up, and they were like 14 points up with like 4 minutes to go. And, they were setting up to kick the field goal. They were 26-20 up and setting up to kick the field goal that would put them 2 scores ahead and kind of lock the game up. And then just chaos. Not only was the field goal blocked, but it was returned by McDonald for the touchdown. And suddenly the Jets, having looked completely out of it all game, were 1 point, were set 27-26 up. And suddenly the Bucks needed to rely on a walk-off field goal to rescue the win and go to 3-0. So the Bucks will feel like what the hell happened in that middle bit. They were quite good for most of the game, but they stopped scoring points at a certain, like they were 23-6 up I think at one point, and then it was 3 points for most of the rest of the game after that. Like, it just kind of felt like they kind of turned off the offense, kind of felt that the game was won, and they were kind of cruising, and they just didn't close this game out. And that is a worry, I guess, going forward, that the Bucks have twice now. I mean, we think about they're 3-0, but they really also should have lost to the Falcons had it not been for a missed field goal right at the end. So this team could very easily be 1-2 and only have themselves to blame because they don't seem to be able to close out games when they're ahead. I mean, Baker was good. 233 and touchdown. He really does feel like he's getting into the groove, even though the media is slightly overhyping him a little bit now, talking about the next iteration of Tom Brady or whatever. I don't think he's quite there yet. Bucky Irving, almost a century all-purpose. 99 yards between run and pass. Egbuka looks like he had lots of flashy moments here. And given that they're losing out on Mike Evans for a little while, although it's unsure how long he might be out, that's kind of a good replacement. So the offense looks good. You'd worry about their ability to close out the games. You'd worry about their defense not being able to clamp down what is not a particularly good Jets team. In terms of the Jets, I mean, I thought Tyrod Taylor had his moments. He was 267 or something. He had 2 touchdowns, interception. There were moments when they were kind of there, but many of it was more about, it wasn't really chunk plays. They were just kind of slowly kind of clinking, and Garrett Wilson had a big role to play. He was kind of their main guy going forward. I'm not entirely sure their running game is really working at the moment. Breece Hall was almost a non-entity in this game, and the Jets just were not producing an awful lot of offense that did not involve the passing game. So you'd be worried about the Jets. I mean, with the Jets, it's like they're so Jetsy, Yeah. They're like they look pretty good against the Steelers. Found a way to lose that. They looked utterly garbage against the Bills. Found a way to lose that. This game, they almost found a way to win it somehow, and yet also still found a way to lose that game. So they just feel so Jetsy. There's no consistency in this game. They have flashes of spiciness, and there are moments when they look like they might be cohering into something, but it's never sustainable. And you just kind of feel that they're 0-3 now. Their season is starting to drift, and I'm not entirely sure where they're going to end up. For the Bucks, I don't know, man. They're a good team. They are a good team. They're probably the best the NFC South has to offer at the moment. And they'll probably win that division, you would think. But if they can't close games, they're not going to get very far in the playoffs whatsoever. They've really got to find a way to actually not turn the engine off when you're 3 touchdowns up and kind of kill the game is the next step they need to do. But at least they got the win. I mean, that's the important thing. These early season jitters. This is the difference, right? The Bucks have an early season jitter, they get the win. The Packers have an early season jitter and they get the loss. And that is the big difference about what you're learning in the early season is teams that can still win even though they shit the bed comprehensively is probably a good sign on some level.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. And yeah, like I said, I think hopefully this is something Tampa Bay will take away and actually, focus on for the next week or two. Basically, look, we can get ourselves miles ahead, and we need to just not stop playing at that point. So that'll be quite useful. I think their run defense was really good in this game. I think they're going to have to lean on that a lot next week as well. I think that's a positive. Their line isn't playing phenomenally. I think that might be part of why Baker's getting so much hype, as well as just it's a story that people like, particularly in America. But he's staying in the pocket. He's running when he needs to. I think he had 40 yards on the ground or so in this one, and he's marshalling that offense. They've got some good wide receivers. Igbuka, it's great that he's come on the way he has, given Mike Evans left again with that injury, re-aggravated during the game. So hopefully they might be back to full strength on that next week. But from the Jets side, it's this thing of if you're a Jets fan, there's only your ceiling target is not massively high. And you're probably for some of them, you're probably coming close to it now with 2, what I suppose you could call dignified losses, in that they were competitive, they were in the game. But this one was a pure mirage. They weren't really in this game until Tampa Bay just kind of pooped themselves. And I just don't know for the Jets what's happening here. Hopefully it fires them up a little bit. At least the points being on the board, the lads can feel a bit better about themselves. Maybe they're amped up and can kind of play a little bit better moving forward. But yeah, I'm not even sure if having Fields back would have made the difference for them or not in this game, because I'm not sure the game script stays the same, and I'm not sure the play by play, how this progressed to the point of having Tampa Bay just take their foot off the gas happens. So yeah, it's dignity and defeat. Dignity and defeat, Jets. That's what you can hope for this year. Dignity and defeat.
That's all you'll get.
Yeah, that's all you'll get. And now, Sean, tell me about Detroit at Baltimore.
Lions 38, Ravens 30. We got the, not quite a shootout, but we definitely got the offensive game that we wanted. The Lions were particularly impressive, I thought, on the offensive side, particularly in the running game. We got 224 yards total. Rushing from the Lions, Montgomery, as I well know from my own fantasy team, had a wonderful game, career high, 151 yards and 2 touchdowns. Gibbs added another 2 touchdowns of his own and 67. There was just a lot of good, like long touchdown drives, a lot of conversions on fourth downs. They went 96 yards one drive, 98 yards another one. Just a very methodical, physical, control the clock. I thought they were quite good on that side of the ball. Less strong initially on the defensive side, but they did kind of up it as the game went on. They got, I think, 7 times they pressured Lamar Jackson. They had sacks, 2.5 sacks for Alquan Muhammad. Aiden Hutchinson got in. He had a sack and he did a big punch out of Derrick Henry run for the kind of the game deciding turnover, which allowed the Lions to build a 2 touchdown lead that they did. So, from the Lions, very impressive in terms of the offensiveness that they kind of showed that they, week 1 messiness against the Packers is out the window. They've had 2 back-to-back really, really good games now. Goff was efficient as well, 2 and a touchdown. St. Brown got involved. They had a couple of nice trick plays, a flea flicker one, and also the Amon-Ra got involved in a kind of a double handoff kind of situation to open up one of Gibbs's touchdowns. So quite impressive for the Lions, and I think that they show that they're definitely a major force to be reckoned with as things go forward. And the worries of week 1 are kind of fading away as they continue to impress. And this is a big scalp, given the last time they played the Ravens, they got absolutely blown out to the point where they were, I think, 28-0 down in midway through the second quarter in a game they never quite got involved with. In terms of the Ravens, I mean, some decent stuff from the offensive side at the beginning. Henry had a big touchdown, and there was some progression going on. They kept pace largely. Mark Andrews had a very good game. Nice to see him back to something like his best. He had 91 yards, a couple of touchdowns, and 6 catches. Lamar threw 3 touchdown passes. They were making plays in the passing game and early on in the running game, although obviously Henry's big mistake in the fourth quarter kind of cost them in terms of that. They were pressured quite a bit, and they didn't always necessarily, except for that one big Henry play, do all that well in the kind of the battle of the lines, as in the offensive and defensive line, not the actual Detroit lines, as it were. But ultimately, they just were missing offensively when they needed it most, which you could again point narrative-wise to the performance against the Bills, and the same thing is that when the chips were down, that they necessarily weren't able to counter-punch against the high-level team. They got to be worried about that. They've also got to really start maybe get worried about this defense that they got burned quite a number of times. Their run defense in particular was a bit all over the place. They were missing a few starters that they just couldn't really get to grips with the line play. I thought the Detroit O-line, which has been under bitter criticism, was quite good in terms of that. So for the Ravens, we know they're a good team, but can they win when the chips are down in the important situations? And 2 big games so far this season, and they got 2 big losses out of it, and they're 1-2, and they're not necessarily in the best place in terms of momentum and narrative. Whereas I think the Lions, they've proven, at least offensively, that they fix things, and they look like at their best they could be the best offensive team in the league, and they just got to continue that on, and maybe now in their mind they're looking towards a return match against the Packers down the stretch to kind of show that they would be back to their best. But generally speaking, very impressive all round from the Lions. And for the Ravens, it's a good team, but they just don't seem to win the big ones, and that's got to be a worry for John Harbaugh and his team.
Well, as we say, all games are important, just some are less important, and those ones we deal with in the dump-off. So I'll fly through these very quickly. Dallas at Chicago, 14-31. Ben Johnson is angry, and Dallas don't like it when he's angry. Bears offense was very strong in the first half. Caleb Williams had probably his best outing as a quarterback, 19-28. 298 yards and 4 touchdowns. The rookie Burden had his breakout game. He went over 100 yards. Their volume guy was Adunze. He had 7 targets in it. But for Dallas, this was a rough game. They had 3 interceptions in it. Like, they lost CeeDee Lamb pretty much in the first drive, essentially. So maybe that was the issue, the game script. They just didn't have the guys to play it. Like, Jake Ferguson becomes your top receiver. You're probably not doing a fantastic job passing the ball that day. Their second half was just horrendous. So they were down. They needed to get some points on the board, and their second half drives were punt, interception, 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 and then the game ended. That's completely unacceptable. It's not going to work. The Dallas fans are mad. The Chicago fans are hyped. Somewhere in the middle is probably where both of you should be. Chicago looked good, but this was a turd Dallas team performance totally. For Chicago, it's good, but don't expect this to continue. For Dallas, they could get better than this, but that was very rough. You better hope CeeDee Lamb is back. Pittsburgh at New England, 21-14. New England aggressively tried to lose this game with their sloppiness and then succeeded. It was a tight game in the fourth, and then they had a fumble and a turnover and downs to lose the game. Rodgers really wasn't up to much in this one. 139 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception. He had, I think in the first quarter he looked good, and then basically New England's defense figured him out. The run game got entirely stuffed, and this was a game where defense ruled. There was 5 sacks and 4 fumbles to keep Pittsburgh in the game. If you have 5 sacks and get 4 fumbles and you win by 1 score, I would not be shouting rah 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 from the rooftops. Poor form for both. Probably, you'd be a bit more disciplined under Bill Belichick, maybe. Who knows? But yeah, no, it's not great. Doesn't bode fantastically well for the Dublin game upcoming this week. Miami at Buffalo, 21-31. Miami stay in the contest to the end. This was a tie game in the fourth quarter till Tua was intercepted on the Buffalo 21-yard line with 3 minutes left. This was a better performance from Tua. He went 22 of 34 for 146 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception. As you can tell from those numbers, it was quite short. They weren't getting the deep ball happening very much here, but it was effective and they kept them in there, albeit against a slightly undermanned Buffalo defense. As we mentioned, there was a couple of injuries to them. Allen looked strong in this game, 22 of 28 for 213 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also had 25 yards rushing on the ground, but basically they kind of said, we've probably got this. I reckon we can do it. Let's just feed Cook a huge amount. So he went for over 100 yards on the ground and a touchdown. They did hold on to the end. It was a better performance for Miami, but you can see, even though this is an underperformance from Buffalo, you could see the quality of the team as differential. It's probably a positive sign for McDaniels that the team played hard, but it's still a loss. Dignity in defeat is not necessarily, it's maybe something you can get away with in year one of a rebuild. It's maybe not necessarily what you can get away with in the 4th year of a program that looks to be falling apart at the seams. Cincinnati at Minnesota, 10-42. One team of these two teams knew how to use a backup quarterback. Wentz went 14 of 20 for 173 yards and 2 touchdowns, and the defense wins this game for them. 3 fumbles, 2 interceptions. Isaiah Rodgers was just a superstar in this one. He got 2 defensive touchdowns, one of which he just did entirely himself. He tackled a receiver catching the ball, punched it out, gathered the ball and ran the length of the field. It was very, very impressive, and the Vikings were able to just lean on their run game for the rest of it. Mason had 2 touchdowns and 116 yards, averaging 7.3 yards a carry. That's exciting for the Dublin fans. That's going to be real fun, and that defense looked really, really good. The Bengals, look, we knew it was going to be rough losing Joe Burrow. Maybe we just kind of accept that this is not going to be a season that is going to result in anything. Minnesota do have a very good defense. Maybe that was what threw Jake Browning in this, is it didn't look like the Jake Browning who, he's about 500 or a game or two above 500 as a starter for the teams. But yeah, just utter domination in this one. Vegas at Washington, 24-41. This was 34-10 at the fourth quarter. There's lipstick on a pig in this one. Mariota filled in well, 200 yards, a touchdown and a rushing touchdown. McLaren left with an injury, but that didn't seem to slow them down at all. Rodriguez seemed to be kind of taking over a bit of that backfield. He got 11 carries in it, albeit he wasn't the leading rusher, but he got the most amount of carries. They just said, right, we don't need to do much to win this game. Let's just pound the rock. They had 174 yards on the ground in the first half of this game. Las Vegas were just not at the races at all. Gino looked very, very shaky in this game. The split between his first half and second half are remarkable. There was a huge Trey Tucker game. He caught 8 balls for 145 yards and 3 touchdowns. He's the only bright spot on that Las Vegas team at all in this game. Don't be fooling yourselves. This was not a 24-41 game. This was more like a 41-6 game. It's just that, you know, Washington need to do very much else to survive it. Houston at Jacksonville 10-17. Both teams missed field goals in a tense battle, with neither side really excelling in it. There was a 46-yard pass to Brian Thomas that set up the 10-yard touchdown run for Eddie, and to let them go up with 1 minute and 45 seconds left on the clock. It was nice to see Thomas make the big catch, because frankly he's not been, you know, not been getting the greatest coverage in the media at the moment. He was giving up on routes, and even in this game he wasn't looking phenomenal, but that, you know, that'll kind of clear the taste out of your mouth a little bit whenever he has a nice big catch to set it up. Stroud then drove them all the way down to the Jacksonville 28-yard line, so they did well. They were in a position to win, but then he throws an interception to seal the game. It was sloppy from him, a 3-interception game between the two teams. Neither looked particularly strong. It's a very important game, obviously, for themselves in the division, but neither of these are contenders. I would wonder about Houston's performance and this kind of continued underperformance. Are people going to start looking at what's the problem here? Are jobs going to be on the line? Because, you know, they've in theory got the coach, got the quarterback, they rejigged their offensive line, they've got a bunch of weapons. Their defense is looking good, so something has to be up. So I would keep an eye on what might be happening there and where the pressure might come from. Indianapolis at Tennessee 41-20. Indiana Jones continues his adventures here, 18-25 and a touchdown. This is a big Taylor day. He went for over 100 yards and 3 touchdowns. The defense had 4 sacks and an interception TD that Moore got for them. It was just kind of a fairly comprehensive job by Indy against a massively undermanned Tennessee team. There was 3 missed field goals in this. It was 20-6 at the half. Once again, and I think I might just record myself saying this and drop it into every single Tennessee game that I have to talk about. Ward looked decent, but the team around him is not very good. He needs maybe a little bit more awareness in the pocket to avoid sacks. He had 4 sacks, or maybe he just needs a bit of offensive line help. But their defense did nothing in this game. The team is going nowhere. I do need to point out that this man needs to get fired. Like, Brian Callahan is head and shoulders, I think, the worst coach in the NFL. In this game, they took a delay of game penalty after 2 timeouts to then kick a 60-yard field goal that they missed. Like, how can you miss Madden? I don't think Madden would let you do that. Like, it is insanely poor from a team perspective, from a management perspective, from just understanding the fucking way the game works. Like, it was just disgraceful, and that man needs to get the hell out of Tennessee. Atlanta, Carolina up next, 0-30, our first nothing burger of the year. As Shaggy said, "Oh Carolina, watch how she rock." Young was really not up to much through the air in this one. He had a rushing TD, but their defense was kind of the big player in this one. They had an interception TD. They had another interception that they returned 54 yards. The Falcons were absolutely putrid. My explanation of the Falcons will be, A, they never at any point during this entire game got over the opposition's 30-yard line. That is a problem. They had 2 missed field goals. This is their drive-by-drive summary. Missed field goal, punt, end of half. Interception, turnover on downs, interception, turnover on downs, fumble. Like, that is insane for a team that was, you know, up and competing with other teams recently, that had collapsed that much. We got a Kirk Cousins sighting in the 4th quarter. They just said, we will put Kirk Cousins in because nothing is happening here with Michael Penix. This was domination in a way that I was not expecting out of Carolina, and I think Atlanta are going to have a very long look in the mirror, because this was just truly horrendous. New Orleans at Seattle 13-44. This is about as one-sided a game as you can see, and I'm saying that after talking about a team that just got beat 30-0. This was 38-6 at the half. Seattle had a punt return for a touchdown, 95 yards. They blocked a field goal. They had an interception. Jackson Smith and Jigba looked good. He had 96 yards and a touchdown. They didn't really need to do too much to the air, so they just ran the ball 33 times. New Orleans just again, nothing happening. This Seattle defense is good, and New Orleans are just undermanned. They just don't have the people to do it. They had no receiver over 57 yards. Their run game was sub 3 yards per carry. Their defense didn't get a single sack in this game. It was just a tough day in the office. You could see it on the faces of the coaches on the sidelines in New Orleans. They're just like, well, what are we going to do here? Justin Reed, the safety, was getting incredibly exasperated on the field. And the announcers were talking about, like, well, this guy, won 2 Super Bowls at the Chiefs, and now he has to deal with this. And I was like, oh my God, that would be quite a comeback. That's not very fun. Arizona at San Francisco, 15-16. This was a tense affair. The Cardinals forced a safety with 3 minutes left to pull ahead, 15-13. They got the ball back, but then they just weren't able to really get anything going on offense, so they only milked about a minute 20 off the clock. Cue the 49ers, which I don't know, like, I genuinely does surprise me when I look at this and go, 49ers are a 3-0 team, are they? What the hell? Because they're really not up to scratch this year versus their standard level, but they had a 10-play, 63-yard drive from Jones and company for a last-second Eddie Pinheiro field goal to win. Like, it was lovely. It's good to get a win over the divisional rival. Neither side played particularly well, but just so scrappy. McCaffrey and Pearsall were kind of all they needed on the offensive side for the 49ers. There was no real standout for the Cardinals of a positive nature. Harris Jr. has maybe gotten himself into the wrong side of things. He had one particularly egregious drop, which was in his hands, and he just dropped it down entirely in a way that, like, I would expect your 7-year-old niece or nephew to be able to catch that ball. Now, at the speed it was thrown, probably send them flying backwards. But, like, anyone should have been able to catch Marvin Harrison's catch that he dropped. He also had 1 or 2 other drops. He didn't look like it's just a bit messy. I don't know what's going on there. I did wonder if the loss of Connor was the deciding factor. As you said, that's kind of the stable backbone of that offense. They were able to get a little bit of run out of the other running backs, but, like, it's not quite the same dependable 3 yards a carry that you'd be getting off the other ones. He was bottled up pre-injury, so it's doubtful that would have made a huge difference, but it might have changed their game script and let them be a little bit more adventurous. Their defense did an okay job in shutting down San Francisco, but sure, San Francisco, like I said, is just McCaffrey and Pearsall, with pretty much nothing else there. So poor performances out of both, with San Fran emerged the winner. And finally, Kansas City at the New York Giants, 22-9. The Chiefs get back on track here. The defense played quite well, some explosive plays on offense. Who knew that Thornton was secretly a superstar all this time, that he was buried on the depth chart in New England? And the run game looked a bit better, but frankly it could just be the opponents and the Giants looking a bit bad. This is a very tense first half of a game, but then the second half the Chiefs seem to figure something out. Like, the Giants failed to launch entirely in this game. Russ threw 2 interceptions. Scatabo was their best player in this. He had 120 all-purpose yards and a touchdown. But yeah, like, once we got to the second half and this just got opened up, the Chiefs' offensive line blocking seemed to be working much better than it was beforehand. They started throwing explosive plays. They started doing, runs that were working. Now, it was still mistakes all over the shop. Like, Pacheco at one point did a chip block and then went to run a wheel route and turned the wrong way, so he didn't catch the ball that was thrown to him, because he was looking right when he should have been looking left. And then that meant that he fumbled the ball. It was a backwards pass. The ball came free. It was scooped up as a recovered fumble by the defensive side. But Pat Mahomes ran out and Peanut punched the ball out and recovered it. So he helped cover up on that side as well. But yeah, it was scrappy at times, and we saw Andy getting a bit angry with Kelsey on the sideline. So that'll be fun. I'm sure that won't be massively overblown in every newspaper everywhere, because he's getting engaged to getting married to Taylor Swift. Calls for Dart increase in volume in New York, but the problem is they have a horrible schedule, so I probably wouldn't throw them to the dogs just yet. Let's see if the Chiefs can keep up what they got going in the second half here into next week. But for now, that's the jump off, and we'll chat to you next week. So let's have a look at the games that are upcoming, Sean. We've got an interesting slate. We've got a good few games that we have slightly differing opinions on, but I'll start us out on Thursday night. Seattle are traveling to Arizona to play. I'm going Seattle in this one. They were dominant last week. Their defense looked good. I wasn't impressed at all with how the Cardinals played against the 49ers, and Yeah, just I think the loss of Connor is going to hurt them. I think just yeah, it's a very unstructured offense that they have, and I think the Seattle defense is really really good. So I think even if Seattle's offense isn't fully at the races, I think they'll still have enough horses to get this one done. The Dublin game, Sean, tell us about Minnesota at Pittsburgh at Dublin.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be interesting. I mean I don't know if the fans going are going to be too happy about not getting to see JJ McCarthy. Although I mean Carson Wentz might be much the same or maybe even a little bit of an upgrade. Both you and Ronan are going for Minnesota, but I'm gonna back the Steelers here, largely because I think there's going to be a different the thing that the Vikings were able to do to the Bengals last week was exploit Jake Browning as a tiny bit of an interception machine. He's a guy who sometimes takes risks he doesn't need to take and tries to force things. And it's a bit of an inexperienced thing they were able to punish. And an awful lot of what the Vikings were able to do was built on that defensive on that defensive foundation. Whereas I think Aaron Rodgers and what the Steelers will be doing offensively will be to not give them that many opportunities. I mean, I'm not a big man into praising Aaron Rodgers, but he's a bit more of a safe pair of hands, and he does know. I think he will know how to manage this defense to a certain extent to not put too much pressure on. So I don't think it'll be a fantastic game because I don't know how good Carson Wentz will be if he has to actively do things offensively to get the Vikings over the line, versus the other side of the ball is going to be a real kind of, I think, strategic battle between what the Steelers are trying to do offensively, and what the Vikings are trying to do to them. Now, obviously, we got to see a little bit more from the Steelers offensively than we saw against the Pats. I mean, they really should have lost that game by how poorly they were playing. But we've seen flashes from the Steelers this season to show that they occasionally, when they have a little bit of, Rodgers has some good connections with his receivers that they can exploit. So I think there's just a little bit more going on offensively by the Steelers, and I trust that they're going to be able to limit what the Vikings can do to them on a defensive point of view, which is I'm going to give them the edge because I just still don't really trust the game. Carson Wentz to have the game thrown upon him, so I'm going to give the Steelers in that sense.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very defensive affair, and I've more faith in the Minnesota defense than I do in the Pittsburgh offense or defense because it just seems to be it feels older every week that I watch it. But yeah, we'll see. Into the early state of games, Washington at Atlanta. Myself and Ronan have gone for Washington. You've gone for Atlanta, Sean. Daniels is possibly still out on this one. It was a PCL sprain, I think. So they're a little bit up in the air about how long those take to heal. So I'd say there's a likelihood that he'll still be out for this game. But I still like them to be able to, have the horses to compete in this. Atlanta just really weren't at the races last week. Now, maybe that's a 1 week aberration. Who knows? But this is a Washington team that just put up 41 on Vegas. I would say Atlanta have a better defense than Vegas do, but do Atlanta's offense, which were in such a shambles, they had Kirk Cousins starting for them for the fourth quarter last week. Is that the offense you're going to back in this one? I like Bijan to do well, though, and maybe that's it. Maybe they just grind it out on the ground.
Well, my logic is the Falcons are so inconsistent. They had a terrible game last week, so they're definitely going to have a good game this week. That's
I see. I used to use that logic for them as well beforehand. And then when it was Kirk Cousins, it was that followed by the Kirk always has a spooky October, but unfortunately it's not quite October yet, so he's not quite there. Tell me, Sean, Chargers at the Giants. Any hope?
Well, I don't imagine so. The Giants had their one flashy good game against the Cowboys 2 weeks ago, and now we're kind of back to their usual crapness against the Chiefs. So they're just not a particularly talented team, and they're up against a Chargers team, which is, as we talked about, is 3-0. Maybe not playing 100% fantastically, but they're 3-0, 3 tough divisional wins. They're in a very good place in terms of their confidence. Herbert is looking like he's playing close to consistently his best. They'll have to figure out their own game in the absence of Harris, but aside from that, I mean, I think there's just a lot more to like on the Chargers side of the ball. Whereas the Giants, they just not much going on there. And until I think they switch from Russ to Jackson Dart, I just don't see that offense being able to have these 37-point games every week, or even every couple of weeks. So I think you got to pick Chargers in this one.
Yeah, the only hope for the Giants is they're at home. It's a big travel for the Chargers, and if they can get that long ball going, that's the only thing that's going to save them. But I don't know if their line is going to be able to hold up against this Chargers defense. Tennessee at Houston next. Myself and Sean have gone for Houston. Ronan's gone for Tennessee because I don't know. I genuinely have no idea.
Maybe the Texans are just that bad.
Texans are not good, but their defense is quite good. There's no skill players really of any note on that Tennessee side. I can't trust the offense. I expect to see a lot of sacks in this game. I expect to see a couple of interceptions, and this is in both directions. I think this is going to be a terrible game. Yet another note in the more tough defenses for Cam Ward. This fella is not really getting a very nice start into the NFL, and yeah, particularly with I spoke earlier about the coaching in Tennessee. Like, if there's a way for them to fuck this game up, they will manage to fuck this game up. Sad times. Philly at Tampa Bay. That's a bit more of a tastier game, Sean.
Yeah, I mean, you've gone for Tampa Bay, but myself and Ronan have gone for Philly, and I mean, it's a weird kind of situation because the Eagles are winning games, but they don't particularly look that good. The Bucks are showing flashes of being really good, but they have these moments where they just let games slip away from them and have to rely on last second field goals to save them. I mean, I just think if we're talking about championship teams who grind out wins, the Eagles have shown us last week that they are that team, the team that can find a way to win in most scenarios. And I think the Bucks have shown us that if there is a way to lose a game, they will certainly explore it. They will certainly have a look at various ways they can lose the game and then make a decision about whether or not they want to win it. So I think in terms of the talent level, obviously, I think the Eagles probably have a little bit more going on, so I think they will do quite well offensively. This Bucks defense has never quite stepped up to what it needs to be. And on the other side of it, it's going to be interesting to watch Baker in a kind of a big game scenario, and if he lives up to this hype a little bit, whether or not Evans is fit and how much of an option he will be an interesting impact. And certainly the Bucks, I think it might be a high scoring game because I think both offenses should be cooking relatively here. But I think ultimately the Eagles just showed us last week they will find a way to win, and therefore that's why I have to back them here.
Yeah, I'm going Tampa Bay in this one. I like them in the upset here. I think they match up nicely because their run defense is quite good. Also, I think after the NFL saying they were going to sort out the false starts and then not doing it very publicly, that might come into it. And when it comes to the tush push, if there's anyone in this league who's going to be able to help deal with it, Vita Vea is the monster down the middle who might be able to cause them issues with that. But yeah, I'd imagine Philly are favourites in that game. Carolina, New England up next. Myself and Sean have gone New England. Ronan's gone Carolina. He's buying the hype. Yeah, I don't think this is going to be a great game. Full stop. But I just think New England have enough. Like, I would hope that they don't, fumble the ball 12 times and throw 6 interceptions or whatever. You can never discount that, but I also think this Carolina offense leaves a lot to be desired as well. Like, it wasn't their offense that carried them last week, and yeah, like, again, a little bit of a nothing burger of a game. Yeah, I think for New England, for this season to be a success, this is the kind of game you have to win at home. You have to be able to beat a very up and down Cardinals team that doesn't have a huge amount of high end talent. Because if you can't beat them, then you have bigger problems than how you're approaching this rebuild.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously the Pats season has not quite turned out as I hoped. We haven't quite seen the next step forward of Drake May, and they just look really messy offensively and defensively. They have some solidness to them. But I think if we're comparing them to Carolina, I just feel that they have in Drake May a quarterback you can trust a little bit more than you can trust Bryce Young. I just don't know how many good games you necessarily get out of Bryce Young. And as you said, I just don't think there's an awful lot of talent in this Panthers team on either side of the ball to really justify having an awful lot of confidence in them. Whereas I think the Pats do have a ceiling that is a little bit higher. If they cut out the mistakes, I think they are a middling team, which is a good bit better than where the Panthers are right now.
Yeah, New Orleans at Buffalo up next. We've gone for Buffalo across the board. Yeesh.
This could genuinely be like a 50-point game. The Bills are in a very good place. They're really clicking. Josh Allen has started this season like a juggernaut. He really seems intent on single-handedly winning a Super Bowl all by himself if he has to. They're at home. The Saints are utter garbage on almost every level you can imagine. The talent differential in this game is obscene. The form, momentum is only leans in one direction. Genuinely, if the Bills don't win this game by at least 30 points, I think they'll be disappointed because they could really put on a show here if they get in the mood.
How many series do we think Mitch Trubisky gets? I presume that he's going to be in from like mid to late third quarter.
It could be, yeah. It could definitely be a kind of a mid. They'll have to. They'll. Josh Allen will at least have to sit around until after halftime. I mean, it would be embarrassing. It
Yeah.
would be a little bit of a kick in the teeth to do otherwise. But I think, yeah, the Bills should be resting starters early enough on this one.
Yeah, Cleveland at Detroit. We've gone for Detroit across the board. Cleveland has an incredible defense, a defense enough to maybe stay in this game, but the question marks over the offense are going to be the problem here. If Detroit can just break off 2 or 3 scores, and they've got the dogs to do it, like. Can Cleveland keep up? Look, they've already beaten the Packers. They could kind of build an identity around being the giant slayers and trying to take on the big names in the league. And we might only have 7 wins, but they're 7 high quality wins or something. But it's hard to look past Detroit in this one. I think they should be able to get it going. They have enough weapons. They're multi-dimensional enough to be able to get past them. I think into the late window, Sean. Jacksonville at San Francisco.
Yeah, yeah, two kind of uninspiring teams. I mean, the Niners are finding ways to win despite, all their players getting injured and despite them never actually looking all that good. And, it's still, as far as, I mean, I don't think, Mac Jones, is he the guy at quarterback? I'm not entirely sure that that's going to be a thing that works for them. But on the other side, I mean, Jacksonville just looked like a really poor team. It certainly feels like the Liam Cohen thing has not brought Trevor Lawrence to the next level. I mean, Brian Thomas is in and out. I mean, I think part of his frustration is that it's just not a very good team, and the quarterback who's thrown to him is not as good as he thought he would be, and he's maybe just a little bit, I think he's seeing 5 years of his life being spent in Jacksonville, and he's just a little bit down on it. Now, the Jags defensively do have a little bit of spark to them. Hines Allen is once again kind of in a good place, so it could be an interesting kind of challenge to this San Francisco offense, which doesn't have a lot going for it. But I think there's an interesting battle on that side, 49ers offense against Jags defense. But I just think the other side, I think Robert Saleh will find a way to clamp down on this not particularly inspiring Jags offense, and as a result, the 49ers offense will not have to score that many points to win. So I expect another kind of low-scoring game like the Niners have been involved in throughout this season so far. But I think they probably should have just enough to deal with what is not a particularly good Jags team.
Yeah, it's not been gaudy numbers, but that San Francisco defense has been performing quite well underneath them. Next up is my pick of the week, Indianapolis at the LA Rams. I've gone for Indy. You cowards have gone for the Rams. Oh yeah, I'm going to pick the team that is statistically better and probably will win the game. Well, I say let your memes be dreams, and I'm hopping all aboard this Danny Dollar Bill. He's no longer Donny Dimes. He's Danny Dollar Bills. And hope long may this run continue. Look, the Indianapolis defense is playing really well. Their offense is really fun. Their run game is going excellently. Like they're a fun team to watch at the moment, and I enjoy having this team be a fun team to watch. The Rams are very high quality. We saw last week what they were able to do to the Eagles. Like it's very much a spot where the Rams probably are the favorites going into this game. I just have this little thing about Indy in my head now where I'm just like, well, yeah, like their defense can definitely kind of cause problems. They're getting after the passer a lot. They're getting good play out of their corners, far better than I was expecting they would. And their offense is fun, and Jonathan Taylor is having a year. And yeah, like the problem in this one is that the pass rush from the Rams, I think, is going to be a bit stronger than many of the pass rushes they faced so far this year. Like Jared Verse is going to cause problems up the middle. Danny Dimes has always had a problem of maybe not being so mobile, maybe not seeing pressure coming into him and getting hit. Maybe Danny Dollar Bills is better at that kind of stuff and he'll find success. I just want them to have fun and to go out there and win. I do have a slight fear the Rams are going to want to go and kick the shit out of someone because they let the last game get away from them. But yeah, I think Indy will keep it close at least, and I've got a feeling just a little sneaky, mistake from Stafford here or there, or a fumbled ball, and Indy can have this one in the bag. I think it'll be exciting, and I think it'll give us a much better idea of where Indy actually are this year.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons I'm kind of really interested in seeing this, because this is a good defense they're going up against, and a very smart scheme that will be designed to try and cause them issues. So let's see what they can do to counteract that.
Yeah, to me, this is the real test for the Colts. Are they for real? This is the kind of game you need to win if you are, because the Rams are a good team. They're going to be on the road, and now teams do have a little bit of tape on Danny Dimes and what they're doing at the Colts. It's going to be interesting to see how that works. But I think it will be a close game. But I think I just trust the Rams a little bit more as an actual team at this stage.
Yeah. Chicago at Vegas up next, Sean. We've gone for Chicago across the board.
Yeah, I mean, both these two teams at the very beginnings of kind of new projects, trying to find a way forward. I think we're starting to see in that last game where Ben Johnson wants to bring the Bears offensively, and when it works, it looks really good. I mean, Caleb Williams looking good. Adunze is really settled into being the WR1 in a big way. They've got the Burton as well. I think Chicago look in a very nice place offensively. The worry with the Bears is always their defense, though, that if they are in a place where they can get burnt, especially in the secondary. But you look at the Vegas and you look at what they've been doing offensively, and particularly you look at the less shining parts of the Geno Smith experience so far, and you just would wonder that Vegas, do they have enough offensively to find these weaknesses in the Bears defense, because I think on the other side of the ball, I think we are starting to see where the Bears offense is going. So I'm starting to trust this Bears offense is going to put up some points. The real question of the Bears is always the defense, and I just don't think the Raiders necessarily have the pieces to really exploit the vulnerabilities there.
Yeah, I think the only way the Raiders be able to get this is if they can properly get Genty going. I know that they talk to the media about some kind of load management stuff, but realistically, look, he's not performed to the draft pedigree that he's got so far, and they need to get that working a little bit more. And particularly because like Geno Smith likes the play action kind of, movement in the movement behind the line kind of stuff, and yeah, they need to get that going if they want to really stand a chance, because the Chicago team was firing last week. Next up is your pick of the week, Sean. It is a cracker of a game, Baltimore at Kansas City, or at least on paper it was a cracking game. Depends on what you think the state of the Kansas City Chiefs is.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, you have been talking, and I didn't really appreciate how tough the Chiefs' start to the season was until I see that now they're going into Week 4 against a third monster team that they're up against. I mean, it's just going to be exhausting more than anything else, right? Against the Giants, they looked good, but it was only the Giants. We maybe need to test the Chiefs against the kind of teams that they're going to be facing in the playoffs. And so far, they've had, two losses, two close-ish losses, but neither of them did they particularly look all that spectacular, especially on the offensive side. And this will be obviously a big challenge. Baltimore are generally a well-coached team. They have a lot of firepower on the offense. They have a generally well-coached defense. This is going to be a big game for seeding, but that also means that you expect Andy Reid to be bringing out the big guns. You expect him and Mahomes to have various ideas about how to shake things up. The Ravens have a little bit of an inferiority complex against the Chiefs because they can't seem to be able to beat them in the kind of big playoff games or whatever. So it's an interesting battle in that sense. I think the Ravens, I'm backing them because the Chiefs haven't really shown us so far this season that they are at the level of a kind of a championship team, and a win like this would be what they would need to establish that. Whereas I think the Ravens, there's just a lot to like about what the Ravens do, even if they have the tendency occasionally to blow up games that they should have won comfortably. But it's a game that tells us an awful lot about where these teams are going in the future. But for me, I think the Chiefs haven't quite shown it this year, and that's why I can't quite support them in this situation.
Yeah, no, I've got Baltimore winning this game as well. I think it's a tough ask, like I said, particularly against a Baltimore team that can put up points like we've seen them put up points in the season already. To not have your top two wide receivers available, to be kind of like Tyquan Thornton is going to be your top guy, maybe Jaden Royals if he's back, Xavier Worthy, we don't know if he's going to be back for this game yet or not, and even if he is, presumably on a snap counter, maybe not at 100% with the shoulder problem. So like it's going to be a tough ask. The Chiefs defense is good against the run, which will help in this one and maybe force them into the air, which is not necessarily the way that Baltimore want to play the game. But I think it's just a big ask. And just whatever you're saying, kind of like the meeting the big teams, you pair the meeting the big teams with also the travel. Because if you think what they've done so far is Brazil home to New York back to home. Like it's a huge amount of travel for them to be settled. Whereas like Baltimore are playing at home. Now it's a shorter week for them. It's Monday Night Football that they're playing in the last week going into this, but they're at relatively full strength. It's hard to look past them at the moment. I expect they'll be able to get the better of them here, but I think Chiefs should be competitive enough in it. They should be able to keep it a bit closer, and so on. Maybe if things break right, particularly if any of the guys are back, then there's a chance. But it's very hard to not be picking Baltimore to win this game. Sunday Night Football is Green Bay at Dallas. Obviously the Micah Parsons revenge game. We've gone for Green Bay across the board. Expect them to bounce back after that game against the Browns. Maybe that'll help motivate them, or it could cause them to tumble down into existential crisis and they collapse entirely on themselves into a singularity. But we'll see. Dallas aren't that good at defense, so I can't imagine it'll happen the same way again. It'll be interesting now to see. I wonder if there's going to be any bad blood here between Parsons and the Cowboys. Obviously, I think he has some animosity towards Jerry Jones, but he's presumably friends with Dak and all these kind of guys. So like, I'm sure it'll go after them, but there won't be anything too untoward happening. But I like this as a get right game under the lights for Green Bay to be like, yeah, look, last week was a road bump and now we're back in. Dallas just didn't look good last week. We still don't know if CeeDee Lamb is going to be back in time for this game or not. I presume he will, but maybe won't be at 100%. And I think, against a team that's shown this much quality in the first 2 weeks and then not so much last week, I think you need to have your guys at full strength if you want to be able to pull it off. And yeah, that's why I'm going for Green Bay in this one. Monday Night Football, Sean, do we have 2 Monday Night Footballs again this week, or have I just listed this incorrectly? I can't remember. But the next match on my list anyway is the Jets at Miami. This is possibly a Mike McDonald hot seat game because he got the team playing for him last week and they lost to the Bills, and it's understandable to lose when you're away to the Bills. But if you're at home to a divisional rival Jets who are winless and you can't beat them, I think they turn up the temperature under your arse in the coaching room, right?
Yeah, you are correct. It is Monday Night Football. Fans in America particularly will get an hour. We get to watch an hour of the Jets Dolphins before they're able to turn over to the better Monday night game. So that'll be an interesting experience.
I'm not sure Cincinnati at Denver is that much better. At least this one is like,
It could be a bit of a points fest, definitely, if they get going. I mean, it's this game, this Jets Dolphins game. It's who do you trust the least? Like, the Jets have shown sparks a little. They've shown a little bit more than the Dolphins have this season. I will grant that to the Jets, but they are also the Jets, and they just find a way to lose games, and they find a way to just constantly out-Jets themselves in various different ways. Whereas the Dolphins, I mean, I think a little bit. I will say there was a little bit of development or progression over the past 2 weeks. You think about them. Week 1, they were absolute dog shit against the Colts, and then they were a little bit better against the Pats, and then a little bit better again against the Bills. I'm not saying that they've solved all the particular problems, but maybe the Dolphins of Week 1, who were just looked so awful, we all just wanted to disband the franchise in that particular point. Maybe that isn't the real Dolphins. Maybe there is a Dolphins that are slightly better than that is starting to come together. And so I kind of think I've watched the Jets a lot this year, and they feel like they're maximizing their Jetsness at this stage. I genuinely think this team could end up just going 0-17 by sheer force of will, because there's just something not right. Despite how much talent the Jets have, there's something not right with that franchise. Whereas the Dolphins are in a crisis, but I do think they're getting out of it. I think they're building towards something a little bit better, and maybe therefore. As long as Tua doesn't turn the ball over all that much, they generally do progress the ball relatively well down the field these days. So I think the Dolphins, I can see it going either way. I think it's going to be a terrible game, but my heart says the Jets just aren't going to win this game, whereas the Dolphins seem like they probably will.
Yeah, hot slop. That's what I'd call this, hot slop. And then, the cherry on top of your hot slop Monday Night Football, Cincinnati at Denver. We've gone for Denver across the road. Denver kind of have to hold serve here. They're going to be very annoyed about their record versus where they think they should be here. Jake Browning, kind of crap the bed entirely last week, so they're going to be looking at that, and the defense has got to be licking its lips and saying, this is one where we can really take over. We can kind of establish who we are here. Like, I think there's a lot of, particularly in the defensive forward teams, there's a lot of kind of braggadocio about wanting to be the best defense. If Minnesota were able to hold this team to 10 points, and what was it? Was it 3 interceptions they had or something like that? Yeah, like the 3 fumbles, 2 interceptions. Like, Denver have got to be looking at this and going, this is we should storm all over this. The Cincinnati defense is a little bit better, so that'll probably slow up Bo Nix, who's not been as strong this year at all. Has had a few more mistakes, but was looking a little bit more like himself last week. Like, it's very hard to look past Denver at home in this game, unless Browning just really had a mare against the Vikings defense and was able to get it back going again. I do think, though, the one kind of push factor for Cincinnati is Browning has a history of being more successful with this team than he was last week, and I think he's going to be acutely aware that the next stretch of 2 or 3 games are probably going to decide his future in the NFL. If he's, a long-term backup, if he even has aspirations to do anything more, it's this area he's going to have to do it, because, the trade deadline is 6 weeks away, Sean. If Cincinnati go, they start 2-0, if they go 0-2, they ended up like 3-4 or 4-4, they might kind of look at it and say, well, the deciding factor on where we're falling short is Browning, and we need to probably acquire someone if we want to stay competitive this season. Now, I don't know if they'll still look competitive at that point, but if they do hold out any hope for getting to December at 500 and allowing Joe Burrow to come back, like, these are games that he has to at least be competitive in. But I think Denver are probably gonna walk this one. I think we'll see 3 interceptions ish, that kind of area.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Broncos' defense, and particularly the defensive scheming, is just going to be too good. I don't think Browning is a decent quarterback when the system is working and he knows his reads. But you put him into pressure situations, which I think the Broncos will do. He does make mistakes because he's just not an NFL starting caliber quarterback ultimately. And so I think in this game, I just can't see the Bengals overcoming the problems they're going to have with holding onto the ball offensively and actually getting the ball down the field. I think that it's very difficult to see how the Bengals can score the points they're going to need to win this game. Yeah, especially in Denver, where teams struggle because of the conditions anyway.
Yeah, no. So I think I don't think this is a great combo of Monday Night Football games. I think
I'm very surprised Baltimore KC is on Sunday late slot, and then they have 3 primetime slots they could have put it into, and all 4 of those games they could probably found a better choice for them. But yeah.
Yeah, but look, we'll survive. We'll survive. It works for us because it's far easier for us to watch it in the late window than it is for us to watch it on anything else. And we'll have at it for a while there, because I'll be heading out to watch the Dublin game with some of the lads, and then we've got a solid, rather than our solid 7 hours of football, it's going to be closer to 10 or 11 hours of football, so that'll be fun. I might even try and get down to the Kansas City bar that's set up in town. I might, because they're going to be showing the Baltimore KC game in its entirety, so might try and get in there for that one, but we'll see. Anyway, look, that'll wrap us up for this week. Any plans for the next couple of days then?
Currently busy reviewing the audiobook for my book. I got the audiobook file, so now I have to listen to the whole thing to make sure there's no mistakes.
Very good.
To minimize mistakes. So that's my next few days pretty much booked up.
Very fun.
Yeah. Well, it is an interesting experience. It is interesting to hear a professional voice actor reading the book that you wrote. There's a surrealness to it that's kind of cool.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, I'm kind of flat out with work, hence the reschedule to recording early. I've got a busy old week in work, but taking a half day Friday, gonna play a little bit of golf. It'll be nice, very nice. And then obviously football weekend with the Dublin game on, and we'll see whether or not we might end up going to it or not. We'll figure that bunch out. But for now, I suppose that'll wrap us up. So it's bye from myself. It's bye from Sean.
Bye.
This has been all four quarters. That's my dog Loki in the background. Thanks for listening, and we'll chat to you next week.